Howdy, folks. Today we're diving into the world of fashion, beauty, and storytelling through the lens of one of the most exciting photographers working today. Right after this. Welcome to Camera Shake, where we bring you the insider scoop on all things photography and videography, giving you a unique opportunity to stay ahead of the curve. And hey, if you haven't already, make sure you sign up to the Camera Shake mailing list over at www.camerashakepodcast.com. We've got some awesome stuff coming up soon, so make sure you get your name down on that list ASAP. Now, without further ado, let's give it up for today's special guest, award-winning beauty, fashion, and portrait photographer, storyteller, and educator, Lenworth Johnson. Lenworth, man, how's it going?
Good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm not too bad, except I've been battling with this darn teleprompter, man. Unbelievable. It just wouldn't play ball today. Oh, well.
The teleprompter gods are at war.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, for those of our listeners and viewers who don't know your work, which I'm sure that's only going to be, maybe a handful, give yourself a helicopter view of what you do.
Okay, so as you said, I'm Lenworth Johnson. I'm a beauty and fashion photographer. I photograph people. I really got into it because I fell in love with a camera at an early age. I started out as a graphic designer in college, and then photography was my minor. And then I had to choose an elective, so I was like, okay, guess I'll pick my camera up. And then I fell in love with it in the early days of film. So I had to be in the dark room, inhaling all that good chemical. And so got my mind twisted into photographing people. So that's how it all started, and the more I did it, the more I fell in love with it, and started, stop. And then I'm like, okay, this is it. I'm going full 100 into it now. So that's all I do is photograph people, high fashion stuff, beauty products, beauty stuff. So yeah, that's roughly about it.
And of course, you're also a photography speaker, and you're a Kelby One instructor as well.
Yes.
What is it that you teach for Kelby One?
So I do lighting and beauty and fashion stuff for Kelby One. I have 3 or 4 classes up on Kelby One. Mm-hmm. So if y'all are watching, you can go check it out. Like how to photograph people in small spaces was my last class for Kelby One. So yeah, I've been doing it for a good minute.
Yeah.
Thanks, Scott.
And of course, you're a fellow Platypod Pro as well. And I know you're known for your fashion and beauty photography, but I also know that we have one thing in common, because during the pandemic, you were also pretty much forced to dabble with product photography. How did that feel at the time? Was that completely new, or how did you approach that initially?
So it was new for me. I was watching Carl Taylor.
Yes, same.
Yeah, so I signed up and I was watching, and when COVID happened, I started looking at his stuff more and more, started watching what he was doing, and then I was like, okay, I have to photograph something. I'm going to lose my mind because it was crazy. I couldn't photograph people. So, I bought products and I started messing with it, and it was trial and error in the beginning until I finally, okay, because but products are very reflective. You have to understand how light works with it. And once I mastered that, I think it even improved me photographing people, because photographing products is so difficult that once you get that, everything else becomes easier.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, really, because my experience was very similar. Like during a pandemic, I just couldn't photograph any people because the lockdowns over here in the UK were so extreme. It was just outright illegal. And so I thought, well, first of all, well, this could be fun, because it's just like in music, if let's say you're a rock player or something, but even if you take the time to learn some jazz theory, it can actually help you in your rock playing, and so on. And so I kind of figured, actually, this might be fun. And then I also came across Carl Taylor's YouTube channel. And I thought, oh wow,
Mhm.
that's incredible. Um,
Yeah.
and then it just becomes a sort of a thing of problem solving, which I like quite a lot.
Yes, it's the science of solving stuff, and it's so interesting that it allows you to the little nuances that you see and get to understand over time is how different surfaces react to light,
Yeah.
which is very interesting.
Oh, absolutely. There was a thing. I remember watching a Carl Taylor video where he was using the Carl Taylor the light dome thing. It looks like it's like a
But
semi-translucent.
round, yeah,
Yeah.
diffuser light, yes, yes.
Yeah. And so, I thought, wow, this is really interesting. And I'd never thought about that.
Mhm,
Um, and then I also realized it was very difficult to get hold of one over here in the UK for some
mhm.
reason. But I did remember that my dog had a dog collar. One of these dog collars that they have to wear when they're sick. Um,
Yes,
and it sort of appeared to be a very similar material, not exactly the same, but it
yeah,
completely worked.
yeah.
Um, and then I love the little nuances because I remember what was I shooting? I was shooting it was a part chrome, part glass perfume bottle,
Mhm.
and like just lifting the cone up a little bit gave you these dark rim
Rim
edges.
light, yeah,
You
yeah,
go, ooh, okay,
yeah,
that's so simple but so clever.
yeah. Because once you figure it out, it changes everything. I can't tell you the first product I photographed was a total mess.
Yeah.
There was reflection everywhere. It's
Yeah.
picking up stuff everywhere, and I was so disappointed that I was like, I don't think I can do this. And then I was like, okay, I'm gonna keep trying until I finally figured it out. You start moving stuff around and you use them diffusion paper. I'm like, okay, this actually works. So once you get it, it becomes so much simpler.
The interesting thing is that, just like with portraits, once you really get
Yeah.
into portrait lighting, you get to the
Mhm.
point where you specifically look at things like catch lights in the eyes and you're trying to figure out, okay, what kind of modifier did they use? Was it an
Yes.
Oxter box? Was it a soft box? Um, but it's the same thing really is true with product photography.
Yes.
You look and you go, I wonder what modifier is. Uh-huh. It was a strip
Yeah.
box and it was in this position and you
Yes.
sort of backwards, what's the word? You backwards analyze it in a way.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of break it down to see how the shot was made. Yes. Absolutely.
There was a thing, and I say this is the one part that I actually really quite liked. I took on some jobs, some commissions during the pandemic. And one was, um, it was photograph um, white shampoo and conditioner bars. So they were like, instead of it being liquid shampoo, it was basically like a soap bar, essentially.
Mhm.
And they were round, so shaped like a UFO, if you want, so disc shaped, and they were white. And they wanted that photographed on a white background.
Oh.
Like, and at first you go like, oh God, that's not going to work because how am I going to do that? But then you start to think, okay, but the surface is quite porous and I can
Mhm.
use light and shadow to create contrast, you
There
know?
you go.
Yeah, and then you go like, "Ooh, I'm gonna use hard lights. I'm gonna create hard contrast. And actually what gives it the shape is gonna be the
Mhm.
shadows." And so it's a really interesting way of solving these problems I found.
Yes. One of the things I did was I took one light, a constant light,
Mhm.
and a place of product, and I just started moving it around, all different angles, just start moving it all over just to see what it would do. Then I would use a diffusion paper and use that same light and go right around different angles, different positions, just to see what it would do. Once I figured all that out, then I know, okay, I want the strip box here. I want a strip box there. I want a light coming from that angle. So, those things help you to solve that kind of problem.
So have you found that, what you've learned from shooting products, has that made a difference to the way that you approach a model shoot, for example?
Yes, because so understanding products in the way I used to shoot models and stuff. It's now I'm using the light differently in positions that I would never typically use it, because now I understand how the light is reflecting off that skin, what it's doing to the skin, and the different position, how that will also change the shape of the human body. So I understand differently now than when I just started. The way I used to do it is, you would normally like, bam, you had your fill, and you do the standard stuff. Now you get more creative with it, and you can do a lot of different variations based on what you learn from lighting products.
And what I found is that when you come across a problem, for instance, um,
Mhm.
I find it much easier to find a solution for the problem. For example, give you an example. I did a shoot the other day. It's basically imagine like an oldie worldy kind of leather chair,
Mhm.
and it had a model sitting in there with a whiskey glass and a whiskey bottle. Actually, no, sorry, a rum glass and a rum bottle. Anyway, alcohol. Never mind.
Yeah.
Um, and my idea was really I wanted to have a snoot type spotlight on that model's face to really bring out the face. The model was dressed in a dark suit. The chair was a dark leather chair,
Mhm.
and I really wanted to put all the emphasis on the face.
Mhm.
But in doing so, of course, I need to get some very specific fill in. And because you're using a snoot, you can't really use with reflectors because there's nothing to
Yeah.
reflect really, so I kind of felt,
Titan spotlight. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And so it was just like, oh, okay, I can use a strip box and I can basically just shoot it flat across the floor so it fans out and light just hits, the legs, and it gives me just that hint of enough pixels in a way, so that I can see what's happening there. I've got some shape and stuff, and it was like straight out of the product photography rule book, basically. You know,
Yes.
it is very similar to how I would shoot products in many ways. So
Yeah.
it's one of
Definitely.
these things. I want to take you back to your beginnings in Jamaica, and you already said you started with film. What was the first thing that sort of got you hooked on photography back then?
So we had a class, and once I walk into that classroom, I see all these black and white images on the wall. And I sat there and I don't analyzing the images. I'm looking at them. I'm like, why would they shoot these in black and white? We have color. And because I'm, thinking about color. But then the closer I got to it, I was like, these are really good. I want to do that. So I went over and talked to the teacher, and she was like, yeah, you can. You'll have an opportunity to do it. I didn't have a camera. So she sold me my first camera. So I took that camera and I went on top of the roof of the school, and I started just photographing roof line, trees to get the texture, because that was one of the first assignment. And the moment I figured it out, and then I went to the dark room, got it all printed, I was so amazing because it looked so good. I was like, oh my God, this is it. This is what I want to do. I want to be able to photograph things. I want to be able to photograph people.
Did you Were you attracted to the whole process of developing in a darkroom back then?
Yes, the only thing I did not like was the scent from the chemicals,
Yeah.
because we didn't have like respirators or anything. So you were locked in this room, that little tiny red light, and you're mixing that chemical. And I did not like the scent of the chemical. That was the only thing. But outside of that, I was in for everything else.
Yeah. I remember the smell of these chemicals. My dad used to turn our bathroom into a dark room and used to develop in it.
Yeah.
And I remember that smell. It's only recently I got into developing film at home by myself. And of course now chemicals are different now. They're not quite as harmful anymore, and they don't
Yeah.
have that stench anymore. So I was half expecting that. It was almost like a little bit disappointed. you know,
Oh,
like,
wow.
what's that? Oh man, what's this? You know, I mean, it's still super fun, and
Yeah.
I think that moment when you pull out the negative and the image appears.
Yeah.
There's still that moment of magic there.
Yeah. Cause I'm like, how did this happen? How did this go
Yeah,
from this to this? And you're holding up that paper, you're looking at it and you're like, it, it's not registering. Like how you get from this and I have this over here. So
yeah,
it was very interesting, but I
yeah.
fell in love with it and I never stopped. I continued.
Um, so how did you get into fashion and beauty photography? How did that? What was that journey like?
So I went to a photo meetup and there was a lot of models there. Okay. So, about 20 photographers there. We're photographing these models. So then I came home and I was looking through the images and I was like, oh, dang, these are really good. I think I'll do that. This start photographing people. So I started doing it more and more, got involved more and more, became a Kelby One member, started watching all the different classes from Lindsay. So I started getting more involved in it and then it just kind of evolved and took off.
Yeah, because I mean, it has to be said that I mean, your images grace, the front covers of some of the greatest magazines,
Yes.
on the planet. I mean, it's amazing. Um, so what specifically was it that attracted you to photographing people as opposed to products, for example?
Yeah. So I like the creative aspect of it. So you can do the makeup, you can do the gowns, the clothing, the way you style that model. It's very fascinating to me because we'll bring in a stylist, for example, and they'll transform that model. You walk in one way or you're leaving another way. My makeup artist normally calls my studio the transformation studio because you come in one way, you leave the other way. Because she's like, there's no way we have them looking so epic. It's
Yeah.
just amazing. It's like mind blown every single time.
How do you how much, I mean, how can I put this? How much do you plan a shoot? Do you have every detail planned out from the beginning, or do you sort of, do you have a vague idea and you start getting creative while you're shooting? What's your process in that?
So I do a lot of planning. Um, I'll do lighting scenarios with how to set a light. I'll use that simulation software to simulate how the light will look. So I'll plan that out. I'll plan out the look. Like I'll go to Pinterest and pull samples and kind of put makeup looks together. And incorporating AI with that. So I'll use AI to like simulate the model to see how it would look on the model. Then I'll share that with the MUA or stylist, and then we'll go over and make changes and adjustments. Even up to the time of shoot, we're still making fine-tune adjustments. So it's planning and it's evolving planning.
Hey, let me just jump in real quick to tell you about the amazing sponsor of this episode, Platypod. Platypod offers innovative camera support systems designed to unleash your creativity. With their stable, versatile, and portable solutions, you can capture stunning shots like never before. And I'm not just saying that. As the host of the Camera Shake podcast, I can personally vouch for Platypod's incredible products. They've become an integral part of the show. In fact, I'm surrounded by various Platypod products holding up lights, cameras, microphones, and so on. It's really helped to transform the way I make the show and the way I shoot at home, in the studio, and on location. But don't just take my word for it. Explore Platypod's website at www.platypod.com to discover their range of products, including the Platypod Extreme, Platypod tripod heads, and the brand new handle, of course. Make sure to follow Platypod on Instagram and Facebook at Platypod Tripods for exclusive updates, tips, and giveaways. By choosing Platypod, you're not only investing in your photography, but you're also supporting the Camera Shake Photography Podcast. Thanks again to Platypod, our amazing sponsor. Platypod, where innovation never sleeps. That's actually super interesting because I use the same method. I think of what I'm going to do. I'm going to use Pinterest as an inspiration or to narrow down or to get some additional ideas and things like that. And the AI thing is something that I find very interesting. Do you use ChatGPT or what's your process there?
So I use ChatGPT and Nana Banana. That's a new one, Gemini
Oh yeah.
2.5. Yeah. So and that one is really interesting. So I did a shoot last week, I think it was. It was a beauty shoot. And so the whole thing, I concept that out with Nana Banana. So I tell it what kind of model I want and I tell it how to do the makeup. And surprisingly, it did it. So then when I share it with the makeup artist, she's like, "Oh, these are really good. Who is this model?" I was like, "No, that's AI." She's like, "No, it's not. It's really good."
Yeah.
So then when the model comes in, I make subtle changes to it and do minor adjustments. And then she did the makeup, hair, and we photographed the model. She was still in shock. She's like, "I can't believe you use AI to do that because it looks so real."
Yeah. Isn't it incredible how fast AI has gotten to the point where, yeah, because I remember, I mean, I was sitting here not too long ago talking about like 6 fingers, on a hand.
Yes.
I
Yes.
mean,
And 4 eyes,
yeah,
all
yeah,
that
yeah,
stuff, and weird ears. It looks so good because she could not tell the difference between the sample image I got from Pinterest and the AI image.
yeah. That's actually incredible. Do you think that's going to have an impact on fashion and beauty photography in general?
You know what? I don't think it will. I think as photographers, we just got to embrace whatever technology there is and use it to the best of our abilities. Use it to enhance what we do. We're not using it to create the final image. It's just as a tool to get us there. And the AI portion doesn't show the emotions of the model. It doesn't show the mood. It doesn't give you that personalized feel of a shoot, but it as a tool, it can get you to a place where you can make that better. So we have to just embrace it. That's what I think we need to do.
Yeah, and plus, I mean, I always think like, for instance, if you're doing a fashion shoot and let's say you're showcasing a particular wardrobe like dresses or whatever. Of course, it doesn't
Yeah.
really show the real dress either. That's the thing.
Yeah. It's not showing any of that. It give you something that's close, but having a stylist come in and style that model is totally different than having AI do the feeling is so different. Because I do these mock-ups and I look at it and I'm like, oh, okay, that's nice. But then a stylist comes in, I'm like, oh, that is good. I did not expect that.
Yeah,
So these different pieces, I think if we just use them to the best of our abilities to just help us enhance whatever we do, we'll
yeah,
be fine. It's like the iPhone. We never thought
yeah,
we'd have iPhones. Remember the days we had a carded phone and you pull from room to room?
yeah, yeah.
So it's just technology. We just got to embrace it.
Yeah, there's no other way either. And plus, I always say like, if you're not into that, that's totally cool. Like, if you
Yeah,
still want to shoot film in 2025, awesome.
that's cool.
Go do that. There's no camera police around that says you can't do that.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. I remember talking to Jerry Gionis one time, and he told me, he went out and he shot a wedding on Polaroid
Hmm.
just for the hell of it, and just because he wanted to try something different, be creative and just do something else. And maybe there was a sort of sense of danger there as well, because, could have quite easily gone
Going
pear-shaped.
around. Yeah. Just got to do it. You
Yeah.
can't limit yourself. The tools are there to be used and just maximize them, use them to the best. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll be
And
fine.
the and I think, the principle is always the same. Like back in the day, I remember, cutting out pictures out of magazines and sticking them on a page and putting a mood board together that way.
Yeah.
And then it went from there to Pinterest, which I use excessively, for
Yeah.
all sorts of nonsense, really. I mean, I mean, sometimes, I mean, even for the things like I have a whole I was going to say playlist, but like a whole folder of images with wooden ladders, and it's just
What?
wooden ladders, models around wooden ladders. And what it does is, like wooden sort of old style, oldie worldy kind of painters ladder things.
Yeah.
The interesting thing there is, you get an impression as to how you can pose somebody around that particular prop. And it just immediately opens up your mind to loads of different ideas.
Hmm.
And I always find out when you're in the shoot, it's so much easier to direct the model and put them in a different pose because you've got all of that sort of knowledge in the back
Of
of your
what
head
to
already.
do. Yeah. Because sometimes you have your samples, you have your ideas, but then you get to a location and it's not quite working. What
Yeah.
do? You have to change. You have to adapt to your location and change, So having all these different things, in the back of your mind and in your little tool book helps.
Oh, absolutely.
I have notes in my little book I travel with all the time. If I need something or I know something is not working, okay, I'll go, okay, I can do this, and that, and it will work. So I don't worry about it. I get in front of a client, a subject, I just photograph them.
Did you ever had a shoot that went completely pear-shaped where you ended up with something completely different from the original idea, and yet it turned out to be 10 times better than the original?
Yes. Recently we did a shoot in LA and we're up in the mountains. I did not expect it to be cold and windy. And because we have these air balloons, big balloons there, and we wanted it a particular way. And it would not cooperate, and the crew could not get it down. It just went left. So we're like, okay, the hair wouldn't stay. The clothing is all over the place. Stylist can't keep control. Hairstylist can't keep control. It's like, so everything was just a total mess. But finally, I was like, okay, guys, we're not going to fight the elements. We're just going to work with it. So if it's going that way, we're going to turn that direction and go with it. And it worked out way better than I thought it would.
Yeah.
Because I got home, I look at the images and they were epic.
Yeah. Because I mean, that's the thing sometimes. Sometimes you just have to go with that creative mind,
Yeah.
and then I remember I did a shoot a few years ago. I think it was maybe during the pandemic even. Yeah, it was during the pandemic. Basically, the idea was I was supposed to shoot a Ferrari and his
Hmm.
owner. Okay. And it was an indoor location, and I had somebody, like a scout, sent me some images of the location because, again, you couldn't really travel freely. It was, complicated. So
Hmm.
I couldn't go and see the location myself. I got some images back. It was like a clean concrete floor and clean concrete walls, basically. And I thought, okay, I'll know what I do. I do like this almost like high fashion sort of thing, with the car and the owner in a sharp suit, that sort of thing. Um,
Hmm.
and I had an idea in my mind. And then we got to the place,
Hmm.
and it turned out that what they had sent me was basically the location just photographed from one particular, perspective, from one point of view. Because
Yeah.
if you turned around, the other side of that space was all old metal shelves with dusty old crap on there, like engine parts and tires and like
Mhm.
old tools and all sorts of other crap,
They tell a different story.
completely. And
Yeah.
I immediately thought, wait a minute, what we're going to do is, how about we did a thing where we sort of juxtapose this luxury car
Hmm.
against that dirty, gritty backdrop, How about we build a little setup that looks like a body shop, like a car garage, that's got tools on the floor and everything's dirty. And then we also found an old, totally wrecked, dusty overall, like a workman's overall
Yeah.
with like paint on it and oil and everything. And I said to the owner of the car, and like, right, you have this idea. Um, and he's brought all these sharp suits and everything, And I'm like, how about we put you in this overall, right? We get you all oiled up, you know. And I was thinking that guy's gonna flip. And he was a really good sport. He was like, "Oh yeah, it sounds awesome. Let's do it." So, so the resulting image was completely 100% different from what the original plan was,
Yeah.
and it
And
was,
a lot of time you have to be really quick to pivot on what the initial idea was.
yeah,
Because you can't stay there and worry about it's not working and keep trying. Just
yeah,
utilize your location.
exactly right. And it turned out to be a great image. Actually, in fact, I think they were a lot happier with the final image because it had something
Mhm.
special to it. It was just
Yeah.
different. It wasn't a clean, relatively simple image.
Yeah.
So that was fun. Now, um, I know you have a history in or background in graphic design.
Yes.
Um, does that influence the way you see or the way you plan your shoots or the way you see your final images?
Absolutely. So, and this is something I get a lot of hand slap for sometimes. Well, so they're like, shoot tighter. I'm like, nope, I don't want to. Because I'm thinking about the end use of the image.
Right.
So I'm thinking, is it going to be in YouTube somewhere? Is it for Instagram somewhere? Is it going to be in a magazine somewhere? On a website, on a billboard? So I'm thinking of all these different things that this image could possibly be used for. So if I shoot everything tight, then it's done. If I have room,
Yeah.
then I'm good. So that's the angle I use to shoot all my stuff. And that's just because I have that graphic design background.
So you're already in advance. You're already thinking, oh, maybe we can add some copy there, or
Yes, copy space. I'm thinking about all that. I'm thinking about a copy space. I'll put image left. I'll put image right. I'll put image for center spread. So if they want a center spread, it's already done. I don't have to go Photoshop and add stuff later. Like, I don't want to do that. If I can shoot it like that with that in mind, then it will be way easier.
So is your background in graphic design, is and let's say magazine layouts, for example, is
Mhm.
that something that drew you to shooting specifically for magazines?
No, no. I just when I started shooting the fashion and beauty, and then I realized, these could actually be published, and then I started getting them published. So I was like, oh, it all makes sense now. The graphic
Right.
design background, now the magazine. So initially, it didn't start out like just for magazines because of the design background.
Um, did you have a mentor, I should say, early on when you first started out, or how did you get from shooting rooftops in Jamaica to shooting for some of the most leading magazine covers?
Well, a mentor. No, I didn't have a mentor. Well, you could consider Kelby one as my mentor because I had
Yeah.
membership there and I would watch all the classes. But then later on, Matthew Jordan Simmet, became my mentor. So as far as the whole beauty celebrity shoot goes, so he's my mentor. He'll guide me along. So that was it. I didn't really have a mentor early on before that.
Have you ever played with the idea of moving to Japan?
You know what? I thought about it. In fact, we were supposed to visit Japan last year, and like it didn't happen. Like it was just so much stuff going on. Because every year we tend to do like a family vacation, so
Mhm.
we'll choose one spot and we'll visit that spot. And so it was supposed to be Japan last year. That didn't happen. So
Yeah.
we'll see what happened next year.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because I spoke to Matthew a little while ago, and he seems fairly happy over in Japan.
Yeah, he's very happy over there. I was with him when was that? In February at Imaging USA?
Oh, I was there. I actually I met
Yeah.
I met Matthew there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we had a great time talking there. Yeah, at lunch. Yeah, all that stuff. Yeah.
Cool. Are you planning on going to imaging in Nashville this time?
I'm not sure if I'm going to make it this time because I'm supposed to be in Jamaica around that time, so I'm not sure yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Because you're based in Houston right now.
In Houston, yes.
How did you how did you get from Jamaica to Houston? What was the thinking behind that move?
Okay, so that was a little weird. It- it- so after I left college, I worked in television. I was a camera operator. I did graphics for all the live shows and you know big stage shows. And then I had a friend who was living here, and he invited me to visit. So I came and I visited, and then I was like, "Oh, I like it here. It's different." And being in television, you see a lot of stuff, like
Mhm.
being in a lot of different situations. So I went back home and I was like, I think I'm going to the US. And the director looked at me, he's like, what? We can't lose you. What are we going to do? So I was like, yeah, you have 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So then I just came to the US and it never turned back.
Yeah.
So that was it.
Did you get into television in the US then? Or I mean, how easy was it for you to break into the industry in the US at that point?
I didn't get into television in the US. I just came as a designer and I worked at a small advertising firm doing graphic design for them. So, the television portion, I was thinking about it. It was like, do I want to do that again? But didn't really follow up with that. So I just stick to graphic design and photography. Started out with headshots, did passport photos and stuff like that. And then it just evolved over time.
Yeah, it's interesting, and of course, this is something I notice a lot. Talking to people on this show,
Mhm.
it's photographers are often involved in other creative pursuits. Whether it's graphic design, whether it's music is a big one. Um,
Yes.
and I remember I had a conversation with somebody the other day, and they're like, "Oh yeah, how is that? How come so many photographers also play music or are graphic designers and stuff?" And I thought, well, it's probably because creative people do creative things.
Yes. Yes. I like to tell people I'm a creative. I do everything creative.
Yeah.
If you bring it, I can do it. I do everything creative. The only thing I don't mess with is websites.
Yeah, websites is the crazy thing. I'll
Yeah.
yeah. I did do my own website, but it's only thanks to Squarespace. It's much
Yeah, I did my own and it didn't work out well.
yeah.
So I just moved over to the guys at Slick Pick and to have them do it for me.
Oh, okay. That's a good idea. I'm actually in the process of
Yeah.
thinking about a new website. Um, Now you've won many awards, but it actually, I mean, you won your first award really young. I think at 15. Is that right?
Yes. I was in high school. And so in high school, every year they had this competition where you get to design a poster showcasing tourism in Jamaica.
Mhm.
And every year we would do these posters, and you have to draw this out, big, I think it was like 24 by 36 sheet of paper, and you'd paint with acrylic. So I'm always doing this stuff, and I would do at the time Phil Nicholson, the golfer.
Mhm.
I think he was at the top of his game. So a lot of my posters would have an image of him on there
Right.
and would enter. So you're entering this competition across Jamaica. It's all the high schools that would enter, and then they would pick the winners, and you get your prize trophies, or you get a weekend for two at this hotel or that hotel. So that's how it kind of started.
Okay, and then of course you've moved on to winning a whole bunch of
The photographic awards.
yeah.
Yeah. The first one was with Kelby one.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, the Guru Award. And I did not expect that one.
Right.
They called my name. I was like, wait, what? Yeah.
Um,
So that was surprising. And then after that, it just kept coming.
Yeah. I mean, so how did you make that leap from graphic designer to full-time photographer? I mean, you mentioned you started with headshots. How difficult was that to make photography your full-time job?
Very difficult because, so one thing as photographers, we don't learn the business side. They don't teach us that. So
Yeah.
you're kind of figuring it out as you go. And that was difficult. And so I had to kind of learn that on the fly while doing photography. So I learned how to market myself as a photographer, and I just kept going. But it was very difficult in the beginning, because like, where do I get my next client from? How do I do that? Like, how do I do this? So there was a lot of YouTube and, stuff like that, making calls, sending out mailers and all that stuff.
Yeah. It's the marketing side I found was actually quite interesting. It was tricky because, as you say, nobody actually teaches you that.
Yeah.
And what I found is also, I mean, you can do, I mean, I remember there were, creative life classes, for example,
Hmm.
on marketing. But you watch one course and it tells you one thing, and you watch another course and it tells you the exact opposite. And it's,
Yeah.
you know,
So you were never sure of which one really works. You just had to
exactly.
try.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's because it's so much depends on, your market and where you live, whether you live in the countryside or
Yeah.
in a city, or, things that work in one place don't work in
Yeah.
another place.
It's a myriad of things. And you can't just settle for one. You just got to try it all.
Yeah,
And that's
absolutely.
basically what I did, is try it all.
Yeah. And you got to be prepared to fail.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't fail, you won't succeed.
Yeah.
Everything can't be just all glorious. There has to be some failure there, because I don't think anyone just get to the top without ever failing. You use that as a learning curve, and that's your motivation to keep going. Because you fail, you understand why you fail, and you use that so that doesn't happen again, and you take it to the next step.
And it comes back to the the problem solving
Yeah.
conversation we had earlier, where it's like you say, you try something, elements of that might work and other elements might not work, and you then go
Mhm.
back and you deconstruct it and you try to figure out, okay, why did this work?
Why did
Why did
work?
this not work?
Mhm.
And then you sort of
Absolutely.
move on from there. Um,
Yeah.
Now, I'll talk a little bit about your work, because your work has sort of a really distinctive, um, sort of cinematic and editorial feel to it.
Mhm.
Um, how would you describe your style in your own words?
Oh wow, that's interesting. Creative. um, uh, so firstly, I mastered light. That was the first thing I did, and then Matthew told me, he's like, you have to be able to put your thumbprint on there. And I was like, okay, got it. And that's what I did. So everything came together as one because of lighting. Because I see, I photograph someone, I see, okay, I like this way. I don't like that way. So I kept going with the way I like, and I just make sure I did everything that way. So even if I'm in studio or on location, I'm keeping the same look and feel.
What's your sort of, and this is slightly more technical for the technical nerds out there.
Yeah.
What's your sort of go-to lighting setup for your look?
Um, so if I'm in studio, it's like a beauty light setup, and I'll use flags, V flats, depending on the look we're going for. So could be the white side or black side, just depending on what the look is. Use flags to cut light if there is like jewelry or so. I don't want too much light hitting that. So we'll have a flag to cut. So that shows up really well. For location shoots, typically we're using a massive bounce or a screen.
Mhm.
So either we're cutting light or we're using the bounce to fill in light. And if we're adding artificial light to that, we're pointing it towards the bounce so it bounces back to the subject. So it's not really too complex. I try to keep it simple. Um, two or three lights. Very weird. I might end up using five lights. So I always try to keep it simple. Three, the max, no matter what I'm doing.
Yeah, I found myself at that point. I think I sort of got to the point where I try to make things more and more complicated, only then to realize that actually simplicity always wins in a sense.
Yeah, yeah, and it's less gear you have to travel with. So that's
Exactly.
the other part of that. It's you travel with less, and if you can light it with three lights, you're winning.
Totally. If you can light it with one light, you're winning.
You're winning.
That's the thing.
It depends on the day. Sometimes the outdoor shoots are a little more problematic because of weather, but you have a production crew who's taking care of that. So they're holding stuff down, adjusting stuff as we go, so I don't have to worry much about that because it takes a whole team to make that happen. I can't do it by myself. It's a whole team. It's a massive team. Like production guys, they're handling all the lighting stuff. I just show up, plug my camera in, lights work, point it over there, point it there.
Yeah.
So,
I think that's the thing people often don't realize, like the difference between, shooting on location and, shooting in the studio. Because in the studio, obviously, you can control the environment fairly well
yeah,
because you don't have wind and
yeah,
you can control the ambient light and all the rest of it.
yeah.
On location is a very different story.
It's different. It could be cold one minute, it's blazing hot the next minute, snow one minute. And then we go through rugged terrain to get to location. So it's very difficult.
Yeah, I've been in places where I remember doing location shoots in Arctic Norway, for example, and just being on a rock face where you're like you can't actually put a stand down anywhere. That's
Yeah, you
the
can't.
the terrain is too rough, so immediately you need
Yeah,
two people to boom in lights and
yeah.
the rest of it. So it becomes a lot more complicated than you think it is.
We've had guys holding bounce, those massive bounce, and four guys holding it, and they couldn't keep it down
Yeah.
because it's so windy. So we had to take it down.
Yeah. Yeah, because with big bounces like that, or with big scrims, a little bit of
Yeah,
wind all of a sudden turns this thing into a sail.
yeah. It's gone.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. And I think again, that's what people often don't realize is that when you're on location, all of a sudden you need a lot more manpower than you would in a studio.
Yeah, and that I did not know in the early days. You'd look at a magazine and you see an outdoor shoot. You're like, oh, that's easy. You'd put that there, but you're not thinking about the logistics of it. The different pieces that have to happen in order for you to get that shot. Because
Yeah.
everyone sees the final shot and they're like, oh, so cool. But you don't know what happened before that shot was even made.
Yeah, you can't see all the craziness around it.
Yeah, there's a lot of craziness that goes on.
Which is why I love behind the scenes kind of
Yes.
images. Um And that's actually one of the reasons why I really love that sort of style where you actually see some of the setup in the shot.
Yes.
You know, I quite
You
dig
know,
that.
I started doing a lot more of that now where I'm showing like what's happening behind the scenes. Because a lot of times I'll get asked, like, how did y'all do that? Do you have a picture of that? I'm like, yes, right here. And then so, like, okay, so people want to see that. So, I'd start doing a lot of that. Pop my phone up on a tripod somewhere if I can, have it mounted somewhere. So I'm not always trying to capture what's going on behind the scene, especially now with AI.
Yeah.
It's more important.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, with like social media and all the rest of it,
Yeah.
there's so much more content you feel like you have to create. I don't really know whether you really do, but it just feels like you do.
It is. It's a lot because I'm like, oh my God, do I have to do this and get that? And it's like, oh, you gotta have this to post for that. It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Do you do a lot of your social media? Do you enjoy doing that, or is that just sort of a necessary evil, or do you not bother at all?
Sometimes I enjoy doing it. When I can get ahead of the curve. Yeah, if I can get months ahead, in posting, I enjoy it. But if like it comes down to like, oh, I need something for tomorrow, then like, okay, I gotta go through all this. It's becomes a hassle then,
Yeah.
But I do it as best as I can.
Is that part of the planning now? When when you plan a shoot, do you already like plan? Okay, well, we're gonna have to create some social media behind the scenes stuff as well with the shoot.
Yes, yes, I do that. And even with Platypod, because I have to send stuff over and make sure I have behind the scenes stuff to share for that. So it made me think like, okay, you can't just shoot it this way. You need different angles. You need that. You need this for that. So it's one continuous loop.
Yeah, I mean, making videos for Platypod first is to me, that's my thought process all the time.
Yeah.
Because I make the final image
Hmm.
first. Obviously, ultimately I make a photograph and then I teach how I made it. You know,
Yeah.
so when I'm planning the actual shoot, I already have to think, okay, and I'm, once I'm doing that, then, using that setup, and then I already create B-roll, for that because
Mhm.
I don't want to set it up twice and, all the rest of it.
And do it twice. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. It's like the modern way of photography in
It's
a weird way.
it's the BTS is a job by itself.
Totally.
It's a job by itself. It's a massive task.
Oh, it's huge.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun in some ways.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, quite a few times I actually had to go back and watch some of my older videos, for instance, on
Mhm.
Platypod, just to remind myself how I actually shot that.
Yeah.
You know,
And you know what it does? It makes you think creatively too, because now I find myself like mounting my phones in different position, like hanging from the roof just to get different looks.
yeah.
So I can have options like, okay, and I'm doing a lot of slow motion stuff now and added all that into it. So just to make it more interesting.
Because you also started doing some video production, I think.
Yes, yes. Because clients require video too. They want social media stuff as well. So
Mhm.
it's all a part of the process. So I have a camera rigged up to a gimbal that I use just for capturing all the motion stuff and phones. I have two phones that's always set up to capture other stuff. So it's just one continuous loop, and
Yeah.
it's crazy.
I looked at the DJI Osmo. Was it called the Osmo Pocket 3 or something the other day? It's a tiny camera on a gimbal with a little.
Yeah.
Have you seen it? It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah. Anything that can capture image these days
Yeah.
is good.
Yeah.
It's because I think it's breaking away from the traditional stuff of just using your phone. There is so much gear out there that you can use to capture BTS and just to capture anything for that matter. It's just insane.
Yeah. There's some really cool stuff out there.
Yeah.
A little while ago, I think a year or so, or maybe a year and a half ago, I bought an OpsBot. It's like an AI powered camera that's like on its own gimbal thing.
Uh-huh.
And the tracking on it is absolutely it's phenomenal. It's
Ah,
unbelievable. It can kind of track you, and even if you sort of hide behind another person, the minute you pop out the other side, it's got you again.
finally.
It finds you again.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I was thinking it's actually ideal, for when, let's say, when you're doing like a live stream or you're doing a demo or something like
Mhm.
that, because this thing just follows you around, you know?
Yeah.
So you can
And
move.
that's very cool because I want something like that, and like now I'm thinking about like a permanent ceiling mount orbit to do stuff with some kind of arm coming down that I can do like a full 360 rotation because I bought one of those tracker thing. Can't remember the name of it, but I couldn't get that thing to work. Like, so it's
Right.
just sitting upstairs in a drawer.
Yeah. Yeah, the 360 is interesting. I haven't really played around with that. I've shot some stuff
Yeah.
on Insta 360. I can't remember I think it was in London. I can't remember what we were doing, but I found the editing quite interesting. The fact that you can sort of pick your angle,
Yeah.
after the fact. It's kind of an
Yeah.
interesting thing.
And you could do a lot more with it, because you have more variations, because
Yeah.
you could set it up either way. You could have it like sit it on the floor and it rotates around
Yeah.
the model, or from ceiling and it rotates around. So that's kind of stuff I'm thinking about, trying to have that set up for some upcoming shoots. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. There's some interesting camera stuff. I tell you what, I test drove a car the other day, right? And
Uh-huh.
um and the what was it? Was it the oh yeah, it was the what do you call it? The rear view camera thing,
Uh-huh.
when you're backing up.
Yeah.
It it had the standard kind of, rear view camera thing, but then it had another thing that basically showed the car from the top, like a bird's eye top
V-
down view.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, okay, well, that's obviously, I don't know, AI generated or something. Until I realized that as I was reversing on the side, I could see a top down view of the car next to me that I was driving past and a tree.
Mhm.
And I'm thinking, how does it
No.
do that? I mean,
Yeah.
it felt like there was a drone hovering above you, filming you.
Yeah,
But,
it's very interesting
but
these
I'm
days.
sitting in a car, there's no drone. Like, how is it actually even doing that?
Yeah. Like, why are they following me?
What satellite is
Yeah,
this,
it's
But
very interesting. There's just so many different ways you can capture images these days. It's so much.
yeah. Um, so um how how do you maintain a consistency across your portfolio? This is the thing I was going to ask you because, I look at your website and your images, and the one thing that really springs to mind is that really, that consistency across your work. What's the key to maintaining consistency? Like, for anybody out there who's maybe struggling with, creating almost like too many different looks. How do you create that consistency that ultimately says that's a Lenworth Johnson shot?
I would say start with the look you love. So if you go through your portfolio, pick one image that you really love what you did from that image, and just multiply that. Just keep doing it. Whether it's your editing style, your lighting style, and just keep doing it. If it's the way you pose your models, keep doing it. That's the way you get your thumbprint on those images, to have your name associated with it. Whatever it is that you like about it, other folks will see that. And then they'll know it's you.
It's actually, you're absolutely right. It's an interesting thing because it's this thing. Somebody once said to me, I can't remember exactly how he phrased it, but it was like, if you take, if you create one awesome photo, nobody will care in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
But if you create a portfolio, or a body of work, that was the word.
Mm-hmm.
If you create a body of work, that's when it becomes significant.
Yes. Like in fashion and beauty, if we're sharing work with like creative directors and art directors, they want to see a cohesive body of work. And typically that's around 40 images. So all those images gotta be in point. They gotta look the same. You can't have 5 different Lenworth Johnson showing up.
Yeah.
It has to be one. So, it goes back. You find one you like, whichever one you like, you pick that one and just try to multiply that every single time. Every time you do that, you get better at it. And next thing you know, you have a body of work that when you look across, it's you.
As a young photographer, how do you get into the beauty and fashion industry? Like if, if somebody looks at your work and goes like, wow, this is amazing, I want to do something like that. Um, how do you get your images onto the front cover of a magazine, for example?
Wow, that's a really hard one because it varies. So you can start off by using it's called Caviar. They publish they have a bunch of different publishers on there, and you can submit your images, and their art directors will look at it and say yeah or nay, and you just try different ones. Look at what the magazine is asking for. Sometimes they'll give a brief like, hey, we want fashion images in the desert. If you have that, you submit it, chances are you're going to get it. Now, the one thing with Caviar is they like to charge for the covers. If you're on the cover, they like to charge you. And I'll tell people, don't pay for it. It's okay if they didn't select your image to be on the cover. It's okay. Don't pay for it unless your client wants that and they're paying for it, but I wouldn't pay for it. I've never done that.
Yeah.
I've submitted through them in the early days, and I'll tell you this. I have about 12 images that they've picked up that went straight to the cover without even paying for it
Right.
because it's so good.
How,
So the other direction is whatever you like. If you see like a particular fashion image that you like, or a particular magazine that you want to be in or on the cover for, look at what they're doing and do that.
yeah. I mean, basically it means, if you're like look at the magazine and see what the imagery is like in there and then
Yeah.
analyze that and then basically go into that direction.
Yeah. Just do that. Same thing. Chances are you'll get in that magazine.
Yeah. Um, so again, when you're starting out, one of the things that makes and actually, this is conversationally, this is why, I know speaking to different photographers, I think one of the things that people often find very difficult when it comes to shooting people, in a sense, is in many ways it's much easier just to go outside and find the birds to photograph or a landscape than it is to find a model. Where do you find models to photograph when you're first starting out?
So, like here in Houston, you have, I would look in Facebook, I look in Instagram, and then I'll find models. And then if I photograph one, I ask her, hey, do you have friends who model? And she's like, yeah. And they would come by and I would photograph them. So it started that way
Mhm.
to get my foot in the door to have something to show. And then it evolved into using agencies. Because then if you want to get the top jobs, you can't really use the local model. They want the international models. They want the Vogue models. They want the Dior models
Yeah.
because those faces are known. So you have to go through agencies. So it's almost like a pay to play kind of thing, unless you know a particular model who does really well at the top and you can photograph her for free. But
Yeah.
most of the time they charge you a fee. And if you really want to get to the top, pay your fee, do the shoot.
Yeah. Oh, that's something, that's something that I've learned, over time is that sometimes, things just have a value just in the same way. As a
Yes.
photographer, you might want to get paid one day. Models also have to eat. So
Yeah, they gotta eat, the same way. You want to buy a gear, they want to buy fancy clothes. So, it's you gotta pay to play. You can't just expect everything to be simple and easy. I can't begin to tell you how much, you know, I've invested into me because I have to. You're paying for marketing stuff, you're paying for models. It's a lot, but once you get to that level, then it becomes easier. But in order to get there, you have to put the work in.
And you always have to invest into yourself. I always say, if anything, invest into education. That's
Yes.
the
And
best
I,
way.
I would say invest into education before you invest into gear.
Absolutely, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Learn how to use one flash before you
Yeah.
start using five.
Yeah. Don't go buy the latest and greatest every time they come out. The one you have can already do the job. Is it broken? No. Use it.
Exactly. Lie to slide. Thanks, Mark Wallace, for everything you've told me.
Sorry, Mark.
Yeah, exactly. He'd appreciate it. He'll appreciate it, I'm sure. Um,
Yeah.
Now, what's one lesson that running a photography business, as a business, has taught you, and that you wish you'd learned earlier?
Oh my, that's so easy. The business side.
Just
I
in general.
wish I'd learned that really early. I wish they taught us that in school while they're teaching us photography, because it would be way easier now. You wouldn't have to figure it out as you go now. You would already know.
Yeah.
I think it's learning the business side is probably more important than lighting right now, because the business side is harder. You can pick up the lighting like that. The business side is going to take you some time.
Yeah. And also, lighting techniques don't really change.
Yeah,
Business changes dramatically.
yeah. Especially now, it's changing faster, and with AI, it's evolving so fast, man. It's crazy.
Yeah. It's interesting, actually. I spoke to Lisa Connor the other day, and
Mhm.
I had her on the show maybe a year and a bit ago originally, and we were talking about the impact of AI in high-end retouching.
Mhm.
So, super interesting episode, by the way. Anybody who's listening, make sure you go and check that out. But I tell you what was stunning was a year and a half ago. I was talking to her about what impact AI
Mhm.
might have on high end retouching, and originally she was very much like, oh well, probably not too much, because
Mhm.
human sort of by hand retouching is important because you need to be able to go back
Mhm.
and fix things for a client, and so if it's AI generated, you just haven't got the flexibility, and so and then when I spoke to her like a month or so ago, it was like the whole world had completely changed. Everything
Yeah,
had changed.
yeah, absolutely. Because I use Retouch for me, and it's so easy now. Like, it's so easy because you have your layered file just the same. You can go back and make your adjustment. It's so easy. It's like a one click.
Yeah,
You know, it's so simple. And depending on what I'm doing, if I have an outside retoucher retouching for me, they have to match that.
yeah.
Like if I'm, swamped and I can't get to it and they're doing it, they have to match that. They have to match my look.
It's
If
kind of
I'm
funny.
looking at no, you're off. Like go back. Like no. So retouch for me has made it so much more easier for me.
It's a funny thing, isn't it? Because originally it was like, well, we need to get the software
Hmm.
to match the human retouching thing. And now it's sort of the other way around, where it's like you said,
Yeah.
a human retoucher, well, you're gonna have to like match that.
Yeah, because if 90% of my stuff is with retouch for me, and then you come in and you're retouching and you put them side by side, it's not matching. So now you have to adjust you to match me,
Yeah,
which is
it's
crazy.
it is crazy. But at the same time, though, it is to me. This is really it's super important, especially because I often do volume shoots. You know,
Hmm.
and once you've got to like retouch. I had a shoot the other day. I was retouching like over 100 headshots.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, there's no way I'm going to do that by hand because it's going to take me like a month. You know,
Yeah.
that's the reality. And then at that point, it's not worth doing because you can never charge anybody.
They won't pay.
Yeah, that's just no way, you know. So you're gonna have to keep that relationship between how much you can charge and how much time you can afford on that particular job.
Yeah.
You know, you need to balance it out because otherwise you're gonna go out of business because you know you're
Pretty
just not gonna
quick.
get
Yeah.
paid. Yeah, that's the thing. And so you know things like Retouch for Me or Apathy, for example, or Voter or
See,
something.
yeah, that's another one I use, and there's also Evoto, and all these AI softwares, retouching softwares, they're pretty good.
Yeah.
And now I know Evoto and Retouch for Me, they're moving to the video side also.
Yes.
So now I can just drop a plugin on my video and it retouches it. Something that I don't know how to do, and I can do it by one click.
Yeah.
That's massive.
I know it's huge. I mean, this there's a lot of craziness out there right now.
Yeah. I don't
Uh,
have to go hire somebody to do my video, to color grade and all that. I can do it from a one click. Oh my God.
yeah. Yeah, and you know, there's certain things I enjoy doing. Certain things like I really enjoy skin retouching. I
Yeah.
find it quite. I don't know. There's something.
Relaxing.
Yeah, there's something zen about that. You know.
Yeah.
Um, so I still like to do. Uh, I like to do that still to a degree, but I
Mhm.
also realize that you know on volume shoots, it's apathy is so good. You know,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. I wish apathy could do a little more on hair. That's my.
Yes.
You know.
Yes. Yes. I need to talk to Vanelli about that.
I have talked to him about her.
Oh, well, there you go. Great.
That's already happened.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. The hair thing is a real issue actually, because it does mean I still have to go back into Photoshop to fix that. You know,
Yes.
and that's a bit annoying. There's some issues with you know Apathy does a really really good job, but um, I think for somebody like me who often shoots volume shoots,
Mhm.
there are issues with processing larger volumes of images. You know,
Okay.
so that is still that's a bit of a problem. You know,
Still an issue. Okay.
because it doesn't because I'm struggling with solving those problems, and it's so sluggish in doing that. It doesn't actually weirdly save me that much time, and
Mhm.
at that point it becomes like, well,
It's a problem. It's a bottleneck. Yeah.
yeah, it's a bottleneck. Yeah, exactly. So there's just there's things, but these things are never going to be perfect right out of the gate.
Yeah. It's, if you think about it, think of the very first car. It wasn't perfect.
Yeah,
And look at today's world.
I
I
know.
mean, the and luxury car you can find, it's still not perfect. So, but you work with what you have and you make it better.
Exactly. Except for that car I drove the other day. That just freaked me out. It freaked me out, man.
Yeah,
It was
they're
like,
getting way better.
oh my god! It's like it's an electric car, and I mean, there were like certain elements of it I just didn't like. I just wasn't ready for. Like the guy when I got in the car, the guy said to me, "Oh, have you ever driven like a single pedal drive car?" And I'm like, "No." And you know, I look down and that's basically there's still you know there's an accelerator and there's a brake, so it's like any automatic car. You know, I'm thinking, well,
Mhm.
how difficult can it be? You know.
Single pedal. Okay, great.
Yeah, it's basically, you know, it's basically the minute you take your foot off the gas, it applies to brakes. So
Oh,
there's no need for you to hit the brake anymore unless you're doing, let's say, an emergency stop or something. Right.
wow.
So it's sort of it's a weird, I don't know. I just wasn't quite ready for that. And the weird thing is, it's only weird for about 10 minutes and
Mhm.
then you get totally used to it.
Yeah, it's a little weird because some stuff will kind of creep me out with cars too. Is like in my wife's car, the shift is on the steering, and I don't like that. I
Oh,
think
yeah.
it's a Benz thing, and I think it's just weird. Like I I, I want to feel it down here. Like why is
Yeah.
it not down there? So if I drive her car, it's like oh oh okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a little weird, but.
Yeah, I'm the world's laziest driver. Like, give me one pedal, like, no gears to shift. I'm good. It's just, happy, happy as Larry does it. Um, so what's coming up for you? What's in the pipeline for you over the next 12 months or so?
Over the next 12 months, I'm not sure. Keep creating. I have stuff planned. I'll be doing some traveling. I might be in the UK. Not quite sure yet. Still thinking about it.
All right,
Need to come to the photography show.
dude. If you're coming over to the photography show, I'd be there. So that'd be awesome.
Ah,
Yeah, man.
yes, I'm thinking about that. That's on the radar. Not quite sure. I'll let you know. I have some other shoots planned later next year. I mean, early next year. For the rest of this year, it's mainly marketing, editing, and a few beauty shoots. I think I have maybe 12 beauty shoots left for this year. Yeah. So,
Fantastic. Yeah, man. If you come over to TPS, you'll enjoy it. It's actually it's going to be in Birmingham,
ah,
in 2026, which is actually it's a really good venue. It's a
mhm,
fantastic venue. It's at the NEC. Um, One of the things I really enjoy about the NEC, and it's something I talked about in many a podcast, is
mhm.
it's the fact that it's all it's all in the same kind of area. It's like everything's together. The hotels are there, and it's a really good. It's a great way to network. Yeah, it's a perfect way to
Yeah.
network.
So I'm really thinking about that one because I want to do it. Scott had mentioned like, "Hey, you need to do that." I'm like, "Yes, sir."
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah. So,
Scott's there usually. He was definitely there
yeah.
the last 2 years. I remember, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, TPS is interesting. It's an interesting show. Um,
Mhm.
it's a little bit different from, let's say, imaging.
Yeah.
I mean, broadly speaking, it's the same kind of thing. You've got all this,
Same concept. Yeah.
yeah, same concept. So you've got basically gear and education is broadly speaking the same sort of thing.
Mhm.
I think the thing that makes TPS a little bit different is two things. One is there's definitely more of an emphasis on video and content creation.
Uh,
So there's not just the photography, there's also
mhm.
video. Um, and now, as of late, there's also the whole, um, YouTube,
Yeah.
social media content creation thing. So there's a lot of education and stuff around that as well. And then the one thing I really like is, if you imagine like at imaging,
Mhm.
you have the education part, but the education part is usually in different rooms. It's on a different
Yeah.
floor, and you book in for an hour or hour and a half or whatever.
Yeah. You're
Um,
running all over the place.
yeah, exactly. What I like about TPS, and again, that's pros and cons,
Yeah.
but they have the stages are integrated into the expo floor, so you're walking around, and you might just walk past, some education that's happening on a stage, and you go, "Oh, hang on a second. Oh, that's interesting. I just stay and listen to
Yeah.
that for a minute." You know,
Yeah.
And then you move on and you come across another stage and somebody else is talking about, video production. You go, "Oh, that's really cool."
Cool.
And I've always found that a lot of the time for me, there's definitely an element of the audience that are sort of walk-ins. People who like walk past and go, "Oh, that's kind of fun," or "This sounds fun," or "This sounds interesting," and they stop and
Mhm.
and listen. And so in that way, I like that integration. On the negative side, those talks are not as long, so they're usually 20 minutes, to half an
Okay.
hour, rather than like 90 minutes or 60 minutes or 90 minutes. So
Yeah.
that's one thing I find. I've always found that I can't necessarily get into the nitty gritty as much because
Yeah.
there isn't enough time.
We're
Um,
more bite size.
yeah, it's more bite size.
Yeah.
So depending on what it is you like, but I quite like that sort of open nature of it.
Okay.
I've definitely run into this. When was it? 2 years ago, they put me on. I was on the editing and production stage, and I was speaking for 2 days. Both times they put me right after Scott Kelly.
Oh wow.
I'm
Well, that's
like,
a great act to follow.
it's like how thanks. And then initially I'm like, oh God, I don't know exactly what I've done.
That's hard to follow, Scott.
It's hard to follow, but then I started thinking, well, Scott's just a great warm-up act,
Yeah. Getting the crowd ready for you.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Unfortunately, the crowd then followed Scott because he went straight to a book signing afterwards. My crowd wasn't quite as big, but there you go.
Yeah.
But there you go. Hopefully, for everybody who's listening, if you are over here on this side of the Atlantic and you're planning on coming to the photography show in Birmingham, make sure you drop by because I'll be there, and hopefully Lenworth will be there too, because that'd be amazing.
Hopefully I'll be there, and anyone who wants to collaborate, hit me out.
Absolutely. Lenworth, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Hopefully not the last time. Thank you so much for being the guest on the Camera Shake podcast this week.
Thanks for having me, and it for sure won't be the last time.
Absolutely. Okay, folks, that's it for today. What an absolute pleasure having Lenworth Johnson on the show. From his journey growing up in Jamaica and shaping his creative voice to building a thriving photography business in the US and capturing beauty with a cinematic, emotional edge. And as always, before we go, let me just recommend another episode that I think you'll love. Check out episode 245, where we talk about the art of black and white portraiture with Peter Coulson, packed with insights that'll transform the way you see light and emotion in your work. If you enjoy our content, consider supporting us on buymeacoffee.com/camerashake. It really does mean the world to us and helps us keep creating more exciting episodes. And don't forget, head over to www.camerashakepodcast.com and sign up to the mailing list. We've got some incredible stuff coming up very soon, so you'll know about it first. For those of you listening to the audio version, did you know that there's a fully fledged video version over on YouTube with plenty of examples of our guests' photography in full Technicolor? Just search for Camera Shake Podcast on YouTube and you can watch all past episodes over there. Now, if you're already on YouTube, drop us a comment, hit the like button, ring that bell, and share with your friends. Your engagement helps us reach a wider audience all over the world. Thanks so much for listening and watching, and remember, a new episode drops every Thursday, so mark that in your calendars. Until next time, keep shaking things up in the world of photography. See you next Thursday.